Oh, look at this. I've got to do something. Okay, so she's hidden him. Interesting perspective here from the inside. Clear voice. Let's see how it plays out, eh, Snake? Hold on, did Gramps help her? Is that the reason they kind of focus on his face, that look, that concerned look as he's looking at Snake? Oh. Thorfinn knows. He knows. Yeah. Did he help? Oh, okay, he's around here then. They alluded to this, that he'd be open to helping her. Oh. The slim possibility of that, right? Oh God. Alright, got stabbed. How long is he going? Yeah, how long is he going to last? Oh, this track.
運命を共にする覚悟はありますか？ガルザルさんと共に生きるというなら、二人で逃げるしかない。でもあなたは身重の体です。道行きは困難なものになるでしょう。
Nearly impossible even.
それでもやるというなら、
I'll help you.
俺が力になります。
Of course.
それしかないか。俺も力になります。二人いれば。
Okay. It'll be interesting to see how Thorfinn approaches this, though. Of course, he's not going to take up arms or anything, right?
不憫な者たちだとは思わんか。のう、ヘビよ。
Interesting.
奴隷とは劣っている者がなるべくしてなるものと人は言う。 適材適所だと。だがわしはそうは思わん。奴隷には運がなかった。それだけのことなのじゃろう。わしもお前も運がなければ奴隷になっていたのかもしれん。
それがどうした？今度のこととは関係ねえ。こっちは5人殺されてんだ。
He's trying to talk to Snake, but
殺さなきゃ気が済まね
え。
手下やられたまんま泣き寝入りしてて、この先剣ぶら下げて歩けるかよ。
ならば剣など捨てればよい。その剣、この辺りのものでないことはわしにもわかる。
Ooh, hinting at his
お
past.
前もゆえあってここに流れ着いたのであろう。
Oh, yes. Potential backstory?
剣を捨てねばその家訓は立てぬのではないか。わしの畑をくれてやろう。土を耕し命を育ててみよう。剣を振り回すよりよっぽどましじゃ。
Oh,
わしはもう立って歩くことは
my
できない。
goodness. Look at this.
じきに死ぬ。お前も形見になるには良い機会じゃろう。お前には聖書を読んでもらった借りがあるでな。
あそこに誰かいます。あれです。並木の奥から3本目。
Oh, try to get them out of here.
その木の陰に。多分やつだ。
No, it's Ainer. The fact that they look like really comes in handy now, doesn't it? I'm surprised Snake's going to fall for it though. Oh. Thorfinn. Like a lion. No, but I think Snake is clever enough to know that there could be something that could happen back, back here. He'll pick up on the fact that this guy's running, like, full tilt. Guardia shouldn't be able to.
すみません。馬と荷車を拝借します。その代金は必ず働いてお返ししますので。
Yeah, that could come later.
つまらん心配はいらん。それよりわしも荷車に乗せろ。わしがいれば農場内で人に見とがめられずに済む。
Dig deep, dig deep. Ooh.
遠いぜ。
Ah, under the bed. So he's been out the whole time then, eh? And there's been no smell or anything? It's risky, but effective.
いい手当てだ。
早い。
Can't be
どう
him.
見たって重症者の走りじゃねえよ。
Of course, as expected of Snake.
雲、アラグマ。
I'm gonna go back.
そのまま奴を追え。
馬車の用意はでき
Oh
て
my
ます。
god. Oh my
いずれ南
god.
の国境へ。他国へ出てしまえば客人たちも追うのが難しくなる。俺は途中で別れて陽動を追っ手をできるだけ引きつけます。
This
大旦那様は農場の外れまで同行願います。
Oh god, he's here. You're about to be tested. You're about to be tested, my friend.
馬の足音がしなかった。
Caught you by surprise. It's been building up to this. Okay, Thorfinn. How do you tackle this? How do you tackle this?
言っておくぞ、トルフィン。交渉の余地はね。
Ooh. Yeah, that's a unique sword, all
ガ
right.
ルザルを渡せ。
Or you die as well.
渡さなけりゃ切る。
Ah.
なんとかして動きを封じればまだ逃げられる。
Okay, a little CQC perhaps?
剣をかいくぐって顎に一
Like Thor's and Thorkel.
やんのか、
Oh.
トルフィン。やれやれ、仕方ねえかもさい。純粋な人助けだ。お前には原稿振るう大義名分がある。 向こうには向こうの大義名分があるだろうがな。どうするドルフィン。あくまで非暴力を貫くか、それとも人助けのために一戦ぶちかますか。本当の戦士へ至る道はどっちか。ほれ、目の前。
Use everything else you remember. Oh, great detail there. Oh no. Yeah, he's got that in his locker. Oh god, the tension.
寝ぼけてて勝てる相手か。
Oh. Iconic music.
妙な構えだ。槍でも斧でもねえ。剣いや。
Ooh. Ah. Right. Okay, so episode 16. I mean, yes, that ending is phenomenal. Truly. I mean, the familiar sights and sounds, it's just so, I don't know, spine-tingling, goosebump-inducing, right? Takes you back to a time, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, before I go any further, I just want to clarify my stance on this. Just make sure, it doesn't get misconstrued or anything. Yes, there is this, I don't know, this level of excitement attached to that moment, for sure, of course. And of course, at this point, I can only speak for myself. But, the excitement isn't from the fact that, Thorfinn is tapping into his older self and, he's about to, go toe-to-toe and all that. No. Yes, there is an element of him raising his fists as, of course, Askeladd makes an appearance. More on that later. But yeah, of course, there is a sad element to this as well. He is doing it reluctantly as a last resort. That was something Einar mentioned earlier, right? And then, of course, Thorfinn also kind of took it to heart, or at least started thinking about it. It's the only option left. They highlighted that earlier, right? As both Einar and Thorfinn kind of think about that, the prospect of that. But yeah, of course there's an element of sadness attached to this. That he's been forced into a corner and he has to do this. Right? The last resort. But the excitement, or at least the excitement for me, again, comes from a mix of things. I mean, that moment, Thorfinn raises his fists. It's just, my goodness, it gives you goosebumps, right? Because this is the reborn Thorfinn, raising his fists for something else entirely, for another reason entirely, right? It's night and day. And I really feel that it's such an impactful moment to see Thorfinn's transformation on screen. Yes, he has to engage. He does, but, it's a totally different feeling, isn't it? Nothing has to be stated. Again, the sights and sounds do all the lifting, right? The close-up animation of his expressions, to tell you quite a bit, right? This is a different person altogether, right? The reasoning for all of this is different altogether. And, that just the imagery itself, the same stance, but no blades. It's such a beautiful contrast, isn't it? Because those hands are never going to have those blades in them ever again in that capacity. And like I stated a few times at this point, the familiar sights and sounds, right? This is really quite reminiscent of Thor's and Askeladd, right? Their encounter all that time ago in the first few episodes, right? Around episodes 4 and 5. It's really quite reminiscent. Hell, you have Askeladd. And how incredible is it to hear that voice again, right? Ah, my God. These two together is just something special, isn't it? Right? Askeladd and Thorfinn. And, I've been hearing that voice in a limited capacity in Monster as well. The therapist or the counselor. But yeah, it's great. It's really great to have any appearance, right, from Askeladd. But, at one point he's saying, you've got a good reason to raise your fists this time. Will you remain a pacifist or will you fight him in order to help someone else, right? Much like Thor's was kind of forced to make a decision on that longboat all that time ago. And Thor's made that choice that indeed he is going to fight. And in this case, I guess Snake is representing Askeladd's character from those scenes all that time ago, right? And then Thorfinn is representing Thor's, right? It's a similar setup in terms of the fight itself. And you see immediately that Snake understands there's this mutual respect, right? And of course, Thorfinn completely understands the type of man Snake is. And now Snake gets to see a bit more of Thorfinn, right? He sees the stance and he understands, okay, of course, that man's been around. Snake's been around, right? They even kind of allude or hint towards his past. He's an interesting fellow to say the least. And of course, any potential backstory is just such an exciting prospect. But I'm not sure if it's really the right timing for it just yet. Maybe once they kind of wrap this up and maybe there could be an opening, right? Before Canute shows up, right? Maybe. I'm not sure. But, of course, I certainly hope for it. I know there's like a mini episode, like a 18.5 or 17.5. So maybe it's that. I don't know. Let's see. But yeah, even though Snake already knew that, Thorfinn clearly has an interesting past and he is quite capable himself, now he gets to learn a bit more about him, right? So he clocks immediately, okay, this is an interesting stance. He's clearly used to having these knives or blades in his hands, but he's choosing to use his fists in a defensive manner, right? Sure, you could say, he doesn't have access to anything at the moment, but I think it's pretty clear that Thorfinn is not open to using anything. And it's simply to subdue Snake, right? If possible at all. Let's see, man. Because they've shown us already that this is someone that could be comparable to Askeladd. Even Thorfinn himself kind of saw a bit of Askeladd in him, right? There's a great shot earlier in this series as Thorfinn kind of clocks that he's about to be lunged at. And then, there's that shot in Thorfinn's eye of Askeladd, right? Lunging at him, but it's Snake. So it's not about to be easy for Thorfinn, that's for sure. And that first encounter, Thorfinn actually initiated, right? This is as Askeladd's right up in his ear. And, kind of imploring him, you've got no time. You've got to be dialed in. You can't be half asleep, right? My God, the sound design in that moment as he lunges at Snake. Oof. And then, of course, the reactions that follow that moment, be it Arnheid, be it Gramps, getting a look at this. But let's be honest here, Thorfinn is up against it, right? Especially because he's choosing to just use his fists, and that's it. Unless, of course, I don't know, maybe he grabs something in the next episode. But I just don't feel like he's going to do that. Though, of course, like I mentioned earlier, it is a bit of a parallel to the Askeladd and Thor's encounter, right? From early season 1. Thor's took up that sword in that moment, right? So I don't know, maybe Thorfinn might channel a bit of that as well, that as a last resort, maybe it's okay. But again, he's not trying to kill Snake. He's just not, right? And how does that even look? Potential conclusion of this, how does that look? How does that play out? The connotations, the fallout, the things Einar, Thorfinn, and Arnheid are going to have to deal with. And of course, it doesn't feel like Snake wants to kill Thorfinn either, right? They've spent a lot of time together over the years at this point. They've shared a lot of meals. He's gotten to know Thorfinn, Einar, Arnheid. But those two specifically, he certainly gets to know them, doesn't he? At Gramps' cottage or cabin, even though he said, he's not going to hesitate to, finish him off. I think something along those lines. I think he'll hold back if he is in a position to actually land a killing blow. But the one thing he seems to be locked into is that he's not going to stop until Garter is dead. he feels a responsibility, a duty to these fallen men, his fallen men specifically. And I just don't see it being a happy one for Garter or Arnheid. Garter is essentially on his deathbed anyways. He under his deathbed. I mean, Snake was right up there, right up in that bed, right, sitting right beside Gramps. So yeah, I guess he didn't really smell anything. Though of course you have to, I guess, remember that this is in a different time era, right? Especially Gramps as well. He himself is essentially on his deathbed. Right? So yeah, maybe it doesn't smell that pleasant to begin with inside of that cabin. So maybe some of the familiar smells inside of that cabin kind of masked any potential smell that Garter could be emitting, right? Kind of all just blends in maybe. Or, maybe there is a smell, but they just kind of assume, it's Gramps. Or maybe Snake assumes it's Gramps. But going back to the setup for the encounter that's about to take place, it also kind of heightens the inevitable Thorfinn and Canute meeting. Right? And this kind of gives us a bit of a taste of it, how Thorfinn could potentially approach things. Of course, the approach there has to be totally different. That's if indeed, they do kind of come into contact in that capacity. Canute's not just an easy person to get to these days, is he? So there's a few obstacles before any potential Thorfinn and Canute meeting. Though, of course, any potential meeting with Canute is going to require a bit of a different approach, right? A Canute who has become a battlefield pragmatist. Idealistic codes of honor ended for him a long time ago. But going back to the discussion from the last episode and the setup in the last episode, Einer's much needed counterpoint of consideration comes into play almost immediately, right? That inevitably, to establish that peace, to maintain that peace, to protect that peace, you may be forced into a position that requires you to engage physically. And it's good that Thorfinn has to tackle this conundrum almost immediately, right? Figure out the intricacies of his new stance, put it to the test in this high stakes situation. I mean, he has no choice but to put it to the test, right? It's a life or death situation from the looks of it. And he is essentially making the choice to protect these people that he cares for, and perhaps comes to understand that sometimes as a final resort, you must engage. Again, much like his father had to do all that time ago, right? On that longboat as Askeladd and his men approached. But yeah, I think it's such a critical moment in Thorfinn's character arc, right? And it's perfect. It's like the perfect textbook approach of keeping him off balance. I mean, yes, he's already turned the most important corner in this arc, but the ascendancy of his newfound truth isn't yet absolute, because even as he adjusts to this newfound paradigm, right, he is going to continue experiencing doubts throughout this phase, right? His new paradigm is under assault. It's being tested. And as I alluded to earlier, this appears to be more of a penultimate assault, as Canute is still to come, right? And there it's going to be tested in a different manner, right? The tactics that have to be used there are going to be different. And that all rides on him getting to have a conversation with Canute. Now listen, of course, us as the audience knows, it's building towards that. So most likely it is going to happen. But there's a few things that need to happen before he could ever kind of get in contact with the king. Transformation is challenging, and there's no assurance that it's going to end with a positive result, right? And I'm speaking from Thorfinn's perspective. But the discomfort he is experiencing at the moment is necessary. And it's happening through these deconstruction tests in his character arc, right? So it's just beautiful stuff to watch, isn't it? But let me get back to Snake and Gramps in the cabin, right? And his attempt to kind of get through to Snake. Implores him to avoid this, that he doesn't have to do this, right? That he doesn't truly have to kill him or take his life. That indeed he can just toss that sword altogether, right? If it is tying you or holding you to a specific standard, almost requiring you to make use of it, right? Because it means something to carry a sword like that. I mean, it means something to Snake, for sure, doesn't it? And then Gramps kind of notices the sword itself. I mean, he's clearly noticed it a long time ago, but, for the first time, for us, the audience, he kind of voices it, doesn't he? That, even I know that sword's not from around here, right? And I think he said something like, there must have been a reason that you ended up here. And again, that kind of alludes to that potential fascinating backstory of his. And the fact that he calls himself Snake, right? He doesn't ever use any real name. Now, I'm not sure if Gramps actually knows a name for him or it is just Snake the whole time they've known each other. But yeah, let's see. But yeah, in terms of Gramps, this is, like I said a few episodes ago, and, I try not to repeat myself because I feel like I've stated so much about this already. But yeah, Gramps is just one of the best, one of the standout characters of this season, right? He's made a change in the lives of so many of these people, and he is continuing to do so right up until his potential death. That might be around the corner. I mean, some of the shots of him, in the bed, oh man. And then, of course, that stunning shot of his hand. My goodness, it's bittersweet, isn't it? There's a beauty to it, of course. And then, of course, there's plenty of those shots for Arnheid as well, right? The focus is the hands. And then lastly, I simply have to mention Arnheid's voice actor once again, right? This is just one of the stand-up performances I've experienced in anime. It's so raw and authentic. It's difficult to watch. It really is, and listen to. But one last thing I kind of wanted to touch up on is Thorfinn's relation to Askeladd in comparison to Knut's cursed head mocking him and kind of serving as a reminder to Knut that indeed he is quite successful in doing things that he doesn't quite really want to do or believe in, but must be done, right? The ends justify the means. But Askeladd appearing to Thorfinn as this guiding hand in that moment, right? Kind of continuing to be his change agent in this moment, right? For this specific situation, right? It's not Thor's. And of course, speaking of callbacks, there's a callback to Askeladd's own moment, right? Near the conclusion of season 1, episode 23, even, I think. He's in quite a predicament, right? And he kind of has that brainstorming session. I mean, there's a lot of similar imagery on display here as well, right? As Thorfinn is having his own brainstorm moments. Like I said, familiar sights and sounds. I believe, it's even the same track that's being used, right? It's one of the great scenes of season 1, Askeladd having that moment. But yeah, it's all set up nicely for the next episode. I'm sure that promises to be a fascinating continuation of this. But yeah, that should do it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in full opacity or perhaps even timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page and potentially supporting the channel. If you're interested, the links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, things like Twitter and Instagram. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 17. Until then, take it easy.